You know, when I'm looking at the browse feature for a lot of the, like, so many people that are live, there's so many
I'm good to go.
streams that's pop up. Got it. You're up. Let's see. The DPS. DPS, there it is. Save.
So for those who are a little confused on what the heck we're doing, we're going to redirect the entire stream over to our DPS channel, and we very soon we're going to start just having the show be exclusively all through the DPS channel. That's coming soon. In the meantime, this is what we're doing to kind of drive traffic to it. So if you haven't liked and subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. And that will help us get to our goal, our short-term goal of 500 subscribers quicker. We really appreciate that. Forte, have you switched over yet?
Yeah, I'm switching over. It is switched over now.
So final topic. Since we're talking, Hellblade 2
Hellblade
came out. It has currently, I think it's a Metacritic score of 81. I think that's going to be pretty solid. I don't think it's going to move off that spot.
I mean, it was the exact same score as the PS4.
As the first game.
Hellblade, yeah.
Yep. The version that was out on PlayStation and only PlayStation and no other platform.
Well, it was on PC too, right? It launched on PlayStation and PC.
Oh, it did? I thought PC came later. Okay, all right. Well, PlayStation and PC.
I think the timeline went. I'll double check it, but I'm calling it from memory because I just wrote it the other day. But it was PlayStation 4 and PC. 8 months later, it came to Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
Then 2 months later, Xbox announced that they were buying Ninja Theory. It then hit Game Pass. Hellblade hit Game Pass 6 months later, I think it was. So like they announced in June at that E3 that they were buying Ninja Theory, and then 6 months later, the game came to Game Pass. The following year, I believe, maybe following spring, is when they got it to Nintendo Switch. And then I think the year after that, I think was when they put out the Xbox Series X, Series S version with some graphical enhancements to it. And then, on from there to work on Hellblade 2.
Yeah, so 81 was the Metacritic score on PlayStation, which has for the first game, which has the largest number of reviews, and for the current version, Hellblade 2 has this largest number of reviews on Xbox, and it's also an 81. So let's see. So Logic, have you played the game yet?
No, I have not played anything in this franchise. This is not a Game Logic game.
Cool. Forte, you are further along than I am. What are your thoughts on the game itself and in its reviews? What do you think?
Okay. So, I love the first game. It's like a very impactful, influential game for me. I thoroughly enjoyed the first one. I think the first game was only an 8 to 9 hour game, 10 max, depending on what you were doing. I enjoyed that immensely. Combat was the one thing that was always the downside to that game. It really wasn't a downside. I just wish it was a little bit more fleshed out. That's kind of what I wanted from the first one going to the second one. Second one, it dang near hits everything I wanted to hit. But one thing, there's a lot of different, I agree with a lot of the reviews when it comes to like how they cut back on some of the combat, how it's a little samey in certain things. Even the story to an extent, I feel could be, I don't want to get into the whole conversation I had with Rand, and I'm mad that he even said that to me, because as soon as he said it, I thought about it. I was like, I don't know if we can really live up to it, but I think this game does a really good job in the overall pacing of the game. Um, one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen in my life.
You think the pacing is good? Because I've seen some people say differently, specifically about chapter 4.
Walking. Some people don't like all the walking that takes place, but it depends on what you're doing when you're doing it. Like for me, when I'm going between, like I look at the way I look at the game now is when you're playing it, the parts where you're traversing across like vast parts of the game and you're not really in combat is like where the exploration kicks in, where you're looking for like the totems and you're looking for like all the hidden rooms and stuff like that, and you're just getting all of that story expedition going on in the background or in your headphones because it's consistently always there in the game. So it doesn't feel like you're ever really in the downtime because you're always either looking for something, listening to something, or experiencing something, like just how gorgeous the game looks just going through it. So the pacing could it be better? Yes, but I feel like for what it's trying to do, I think they kind of hit a kind of a sweet spot with it. For me, the only downside is they did take away from the combat. I feel like a little bit, like the combat is really cinematic, like breathtakingly cinematic when you're playing it. It's sitting there like it's like you hit certain markers or you hit certain transitions, and the effects that come out of it is like incredible. Like, just all the way down to, the whole 1 versus 1 aspect of it, being surrounded by people and the music kicks in. Like, I feel like Ninja Theory does such a great job with just introducing the feel and sound of music.
Shout out to David Garcia. That's his work.
Shout out to because when you go into like certain battles, like just out of nowhere, the music just amps up and it's like it's never really overpowering the scene because you still have these other senses and stuff that you're listening to, like your voice is telling you to do this, do that, get up and all this other stuff. But then in the background, you hear this like low thump, like stomping on, like at people at the stadium stomping on the ground consistently, like with the beat of a drum or something. And it's like really impactful when you're playing the game, and it makes you like feel all real charged up and stuff. So for me, I really like the experience that I'm in, where I'm at with the game and stuff. Like I was telling you earlier, chapter 4 is probably the longest chapter in the game, and I can definitely see where the divisiveness for a lot of people comes in with this game, and really can't explain what that is without really doing any spoilers, and we're not really trying to do that right now. But even when I got out of that chapter and I finished it, I was tired, bro. Like when I got out of chapter 4, I was like, that was really good, but I was exhausted by the time that was over with, because that chapter, how it feels like the way the game builds up, it takes you through each element of what Hellblade is, from like the sensory overload to the vistas to the experience in combat. And it's like it hits this apex in chapter 4 where you're doing all of that stuff, not all the time, but they're doing it to you at certain points where you're really focused on your senses, or you're really focused on your environment, or you're really, really focused on combat. So they hit you really hard in all areas of the game in that chapter, and you are literally exhausted by the time you come out of it. So I really, really enjoyed the experience so far. I'm gonna most likely finish it tomorrow. Well, I will finish it tomorrow, because I was thinking about going back in after the show today and knocking out the last chapter, because I hear it's only like another hour and a half to 2 hours to go through the last chapter. But I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the story. I can see where the reviews are kind of falling at, being kind of right in line with the first one. I think it's kind of hard to live up to the the overall like gravitas that the first one brought the first time around, because you could only do that magic trick one time. But I think they did a lot of things with the story and the development of that stuff to kind of like make this game its own. But I think this game's going to win a whole crap ton of awards. It is, but the thing is, to some people, this isn't a true game. It's more of an experience. And when I think about it, think of like VR, like how VR
I hate that.
games
I hate
are.
that. Let me.
Yeah.
Can I interject real quick?
Go ahead.
I
Yeah, go
hate
ahead.
when people take their own personal subjective view of what a quote unquote game is,
What a game is,
and
right.
then apply that to everything. Like,
Right.
did you pick up a controller and play it?
Because I did.
Yeah. Did
It
you
felt
like?
a game.
Does it have? Because these are the same people that to them, the only things that are quote unquote games are where you're always fighting 24/7, or you're always doing things that they enjoy doing. They
Right.
don't enjoy walking and talking. And because they see that in movies, even though you're not controlling the characters in movies, they apply that to say this isn't a game. And I'm like, well, in a movie, you can't make the character walk into a house and go look at something. And in the movie, you can't make the character make a choice to not do certain things. So like, no, this is a game. So like, I just think that people need this to remove the narcissism a little bit.
Yes. I agree.
Your own personal view on what you think a game is has nothing to do with whether a game is objectively really a game. And so get over yourself. I'm not taking shots at anybody. Not yet. If I did that.
So I mean, because the scene, though, the mission you have playing right now, the scene you have playing right now is like one of the very first ones where you're, you know, having a lot of combat in one small area with different people. What do you think? Because I do want to get, because I want to hear what your, you know what, matter of fact, give me what your experience with it is first, because then we can talk about some more of the technical stuff after that.
All right, well, I would say this is probably one of the best looking games I've ever played. The level of fidelity with this is definitely what the visual presentation in this game is what Epic intended when they showed that Lumen demo
trailer.
back in 2020, back when the game engine couldn't even have a playable game that played like that. Now here we are in 2024 on Unreal Engine 5.4, and it's achieving that now. Now, that said, Ninja Theory spent about 3.5 years working on this game. It's not the 5 years that people think it is. It's about 3.5 years they spent on the game, and in 3.5 years, you got a below 10 hours of gameplay game. That's just that was the choice they made and the direction they made and how they wanted to develop this game. Now, I think it's a valid opinion that if you enjoyed the first game, well, why aren't you enjoying this one? Well, I think that's a valid question. But I think it's also a valid opinion that if you had complaints with the first game and you played the game before it ever showed up on an Xbox platform, and you played the game before it was ever the studio was ever acquired by Microsoft, and then you see this game come out, and despite all the improvements they may have made with making the combat more cinematic, they actually took away some of the things you could do in combat. There's less people to fight all at once, and if you don't like that, that's completely valid too. If you kind of felt like, I don't even want to see them puzzles ever again, but you still getting some of those puzzles, that's valid as well. Like, these are things that I feel, I find it like on both sides of the conversation pretty humorous that people would say they don't like these kind of games, but love this one. But typically, when they said I don't like these kind of games, they're talking about particularly exclusive games that are on a particular platform. That's not this platform. And vice versa, because there are people who are like, I freaking loved Hellblade, and then now they're like, it's meh, it's mid, and it's just, you know, how are you laughing at the Metacritic score? It's the same Metacritic score that the first game got that you said you loved. So it's just, so there's a lot of capping going on right now, is what I'm saying. Now, for myself personally, I'm liking the game. I actually, I've talked to a few people that we know, and some of them are like, well, they actually think the story for the first one's better. And so far, look, I'm only in chapter 3, so I'm only like halfway through the game, so I can't really call it. But
right,
I can't say it. I mean, well, I say I can't call it. I can't say it definitively that like the story is better or worse. But so far, from what I've played from chapter 1 to 3, I enjoy this game's story more than Hellblade 1's story, and I'll tell you why. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that in Hellblade 1, a lot of the dialogue was the voices speaking to Senua. And then you had like those lore stones, and then other little like areas where it would be like you'll be talking to like a character in a flashback or something like that. And I mean, it was okay, but I didn't really find that to be all that interesting. Now, that said, when I'm playing this game, you got other NPCs that are actually there in front of you that you talk to. Like there's the I don't want to say like it's still fairly new, so there's like, I don't want to say all the characters, but like I have basically acquired 2 companions for Senua at this point by the time of chapter 3. And I'm like, yeah, all right, cool. Like I prefer this dialogue much better. And I know what, even though there's a lot of mystery going on, I know why certain things are happening. And there's the second NPC character I got actually really started to explain what was going on in a way that made a lot of sense. And it's a lot less, I think the first game has a lot of where they expect you to interpret it, you know, and I think that like there's not a lot that you need to interpret with this game. They tell you straight up, which is fine, you know. And so I'm enjoying that aspect of the game for real. And I think when it comes to the visuals, and I said like it's the best looking game I've seen in a long time. I think it's one of the best games. I'm not gonna say it's the best looking game ever. I know some people are going that far, but I think that's a little bit of the fog of war, a little bit of it's brand new, and you know, people forget how they felt about other titles. What this game does, and I think Ninja Theory are really good at Unreal Engine, and they're really good at developing a game like this, I think. But there are some aspects of other games that like you can definitely look at like certain things with art direction that you could say, well, you may prefer a different game than this game, or the environments you could prefer more. But Ninja Theory is probably have put themselves in the category where they're probably the best at like motion capture at this point in gaming. You look at like how like in the combat, and you can see like the facial expressions of the enemies that's fighting you and Senua, and you can actually like just that cinematic look to it is really, really good. And you haven't seen this done on that level by anyone else yet. Not saying that we're never going to see someone do it on this level ever again, but like they've definitely raised the bar at that point. But I think all that came to the detriment of other things that people wanted after playing the first game. And so like, for example, when it came to, and I'll talk about a different IP, with Spider-Man. When Spider-Man 2 came out, there was criticism of Spider-Man 2. Still a good game, still a very good game, right? But there was criticism of Spider-Man 2 for not going far enough in kind of expanding or evolving the gameplay design. You know how it's going to work. And that's
and the
it,
game
right?
lives. Yep, exactly.
And so those were valid criticisms because these were things that people talked about in the first game, and especially when it came to Mary Jane, where people's like, we ain't trying to do no more Mary Jane missions. Get her out there. Look, she's Mary Jane. That's Peter's girl. She's supposed to be in the game. I don't want to play as her. So stop making me play as her. And then what do? They double down and say, not only are you going to play as her, we're going to turn her into freaking Lara Croft. And it's just like, hello? Like, that was, I would say, valid criticism for the developer not listening to what the consumer who plays the game wanted. No, and one of the directors of the game came out and flat out said, we knew people would prefer us to not even do Mary Jane missions ever again. But we said, you know what? We could do it better than before. So you just basically just ignored what the consumers felt and what the consumer said. Cool. You're going to get the criticism you get for that. And that's valid. With this game, people had two criticisms of that. I think two main criticisms of Hellblade 1 that were there from the very first time it launched, before Microsoft acquired them and before it came to Xbox. And that were the puzzles and how the puzzles were implemented. And that was also the combat being very shallow, not being very in depth. And I think those things are still there. Those are still issues with this game. And you could say, well, you knew what game you were playing. Why complain? And I'm like, well, that's true. Yet at the same time, are you telling people they can't complain about things they didn't like about a game?
Yeah.
It's just like, it sounds like you're trying to silence people. And it's weird. It's like, I've seen people, and I've been, even before I played the game, I didn't play it the first day it came out. I played it the very next day. I was real busy the first day because I had to work from like 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. And so I was dead tired and sleep for the majority of that day, while everyone was screaming at each other about, Metacritic scores in this game. And when I woke up to speak my piece, I just quoted a tweet I made 2 years ago about how Metacritic has a weighted average and you shouldn't take Metacritic seriously. And then I also spoke on the fact that, like, there are people who care more about other people's opinions in this gaming community than their very own hype for the game. If you like and enjoy the game, that's all that matters. If you don't like the game, I really don't, like, I can understand people disagreeing with you not liking it, but I don't understand, and nor am I ever going to, like, really be behind people trying to shut down conversation. And it's almost as if, like, is it supposed to be perfect then? Is it, you tell me, is this a perfect game? Because it seems like anytime anyone complains about, and it's not just this game, because this happens every time there is a exclusive game that comes out. And I feel like I have this thought. I want to ask these people, what did you not like about the game? Because they never seem to be able to find anything they find to be negative about the game. They only talk about the game in glowing terms, and then poo-poo, insult, and shop down and call people dumb and stupid for anyone that disagrees about anything about said game. And it's just like, well, what did you dislike about the game? And if you can't tell me there's something that you dislike about, because, like, every single game I play, even the games I think they're amazing, some of my favorite games of all time, I could tell you 1 or 2 things that I dislike about the game. So you tell me you can't think of anything you dislike about the game, I'm just going to say you're just a fanboy. You don't know what you're talking about, and no one should take you seriously. That's my subjective opinion. But it is what it is. I mean, and like, you're basically giving me all the ammo to say that because you can't be objective. And I see that on both sides, because the people that are complaining about this game, the next time, like when Concord comes out later this year, there are going to be ones, not everyone, but there's going to be a significant number of those people are going to be capping for Concord and poo-pooing any complaints on that game, and it's just it's silliness on both sides. And so, all that said, I'm enjoying it so far. I really want to get to this chapter 4 that everyone's talking about, because it seems that chapter is very divisive, and that chapter seems to be the one that kind of like people either go from I'm enjoying it or I'm loving it to I'm loving it goes to I'm just enjoying it, or I'm enjoying it goes down to all right, I'm just trying to finish this because I'm kind of annoyed. And it's just
I'm telling you, bro, it tests you. Chapter 4 tests you really. I really think it comes back to, I think it is doing a lot of the things that people don't want to do in the game, because it's a lot of exploration, a lot of it. But in the way that they're doing it, it's very engaging. But if you're not the type of person that likes to do stuff like that on like for long periods of time, then that's where I feel like a lot of people is like, I just want this to be over with. But let me tell you, oh boy, that chapter amps up when you get about halfway through it.
Yeah,
at one point I found myself just like everybody else, like I want this to be over with. And then I had to go get my daughter from school, and I went to go, like I left out of the game, I saved my my recording, I left, and then I went to see what chapter I was in. I said, I'm still in chapter 4. I was like, I had, the recording was 3 hours long. I was like, I'm still, and it wasn't like I was getting stuck. Like, I think there was one puzzle I got stuck on in chapter 4 for like probably like 15 minutes, because it has you doing some new stuff in this that you didn't do in the first one, which is very welcoming. I do like the new puzzle designs that they do have in the game versus the first one. But the first one so they too.
Yeah, and so that's like, if you could have just gone with the new puzzle designs instead of, because like I actually at this point in the gameplay, I've just completed one of the old puzzles. Like when you first get into this village, you have one of the old puzzles, and
the old puzzles,
I had the issue on so there's like one of those puzzles is you have 3 separate, you have to find like things in the environment that like you stand in a specific spot, and it will something, if you're looking in the right point in the right direction, you will see something that has the symbol of whatever the symbol is you need to unlock to go further. And I'm doing the third one, which is like basically you have to walk outside of the village and go up on like a little platform or whatever, a little hill, and then look down. And I had one of those issues I used to have with the first game where it's like, I'm looking at it, bro, I'm looking at it. What do you want me to do? It's like it's not activating, so I gotta kind of do like a little shuffle. I gotta do a little dance, like I'm Childish Gambino in that new video. Like I'm dancing, you know. I'm doing all this dancing to get it to just activate. Yeah, I'm doing the show, and it's just like activate, damn it. And those puzzles suck, and it's just like you knew people didn't like them puzzles from the first game. And it's good that you got different puzzles in the game. Why are these puzzles still in here though? Like they should not, like when you have a valid criticism, and either you whatever the issue was where people could not activate the puzzle and the lock or whatever, and they're looking directly at it, make it so that doesn't happen, or you just don't put those puzzles in the game. And I feel like why are they still there? But I'm glad there are newer puzzles. I want to see those newer puzzles.
Yeah, the new puzzles are they make you think about the environment a little bit more. It took a minute to figure out exactly how they work, but I really like the new puzzle designs or the new ones they have. And it like a lot of people in the chat are saying, like, you know, Rodimus says he's in chapter 4. It's super long. And then what's it just said that player says the chapter 4 is fire when you get to he ain't lying. 4 at the end, whoo, it's a whole nother thing, bro. It's so good. I can see where people, like I said, I can see where people are like, let me off this ride in the middle of chapter 4. But if you don't break and you continue to keep playing the game, you are super rewarded at the end of it. I can't wait to see you get to it slow. We've been talking logic, so just you haven't played it yet, but just from like all the discourse and everything you heard from just people's experience talking about them playing it or the review scores in general, maybe you can even talk about, a lot of people are saying that if the game doesn't do well, Ninja Theory could be that next studio that's out. So what are like just the overarching things about this game and where the studio is? What are your thoughts in general?
So we don't need to caveat it with yet. I'm not going to play the game. Like I said, this is just like, unless like, I don't know. Well, I don't want to say certain things unless like something weird happens and I just have like some immense amount of free time.
We'll just make a bet like Slow-Mo does, and you have to play the game if somebody does something crazy.
Maybe this is not Death Stranding where I was Death Stranding curious and eventually I got around to playing it. Like I just like the premise of this game just doesn't particularly interest me. But the thing that I think I am most, that my blood is boiled about most this week has been what Slow-Mo talked about, which is just my overall disappointment in the discourse that has surrounded this game for the week. And we do this every single time there's a big major release. Every single time that, like, it's one of the most frustrating things in the world that, like, when there is a big major release, that should actually be, I would think, the time when the gaming conversation is the most interesting. But it's actually when it is at its absolute worst. And I hate to totally nerd out, but I want to read something really quick if you guys don't mind.
Listen, man, you home, man. You can read all you want.
So this is a thing that I was reading this week, totally disassociated from this game. It was for some other interest area of mine, but it seemed like incredibly relevant to what I was seeing, what was going on the timeline. So the quote goes like this: philosophy. Oh, let me go back. I did want to ask you guys one question before I read this.
Yeah.
Do you guys consider yourselves and your aspect on games? Do you guys think of yourselves as philosophers with regards to your engagement with games?
I couldn't hear you say again.
Do you guys think of yourselves as philosophers with regards to your aspect and your relationship with games?
Oh, absolutely. My ego says yes.
Yeah, exactly. I know Slow-Mo's ego's gonna say yeah, like scream for the up tops.
I do too, and I'll come back to that a lot. But this is this quote: philosophy is endlessly interesting and ample. Anything can be thought about philosophically. The philosopher's deepest urge, though, is to articulate and understand the ultimate basis and nature of things. What is the basis of our beliefs and our ethical principles, our standards of reasoning and of justification? What is the fundamental nature of mind, matter, identity over time, causality, knowledge, free will, truth, and consciousness? And how are all these to be put together into a meaningful whole? What could be more worth thinking about? And what could be more ennobling than thinking about these things? It is, Aristotle said, the most godlike of human activities. And so the reason that seemed relevant to me, and the reason it stuck out to me, and the reason it kind of anchors me to the things that I've been observing is because to me, our engagement with the games and the people I seek out to have conversations with games about games hinges on what you guys mentioned, right? That you consider yourselves philosophers. The point is that it is an artistic work which, in order to have a meaningful conversation about, in my mind, you really have to pull the thing apart, right? As you sit there, it's very easy to sit there and casually observe any artistic work, television, movie, a game, and walk away with it with an incredibly surface level, super simplistic explanation, right, of what you just experienced. But the people who really are capable of thinking deep on it, and in my mind, the people who are attracted to something that hinges on the notion of philosophy, is people who are really going at it and trying to do that at a very deep and complex level. If this is an artistically significant game, as many people claim, then it should carry with it a equivalent level, depth, complexity, and sophistication of discussion around the game. And so just like you said, Slow-Mo, one of my biggest problems with kind of what I've seen going on this week is that there has been a deliberate effort to kind of gatekeep and kind of embargo, right, a certain level of the surface area of discussion of this game, that being that you can't discuss the game if you're going to cite anything negative. You know, you can't discuss the game. You know, did you play the first game? Well, hold on a second. Are we saying that the only comments on the game that can be taken into consideration for having a philosophical discussion about the artistic piece of work that someone just experienced, it's only relevant if they played the first game? And my response to that is
and to take that a step further, if you played the first game and you like the first game, then you can't complain about the second game. It's like
right. Which I'm like, do you understand there's an entire demographic of the market that at any one point along the chronological timeline, right, of life, will not have experienced a previous iteration of a thing?
Yeah.
And the thing that has been super frustrating for me about this is the same thing that we tried to weaponize when it came to the discussion on Starfield. Your criticisms of Starfield don't matter if anything that you're criticizing has ever in any format, right, ever been present in any Bethesda past work. And I'm like, that makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
Like,
you know, it's weird, and this just really popped in my head. I haven't thought about the series in forever. Y'all remember Dynasty Warriors?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I remember as a kid going to the Blockbuster and renting Dynasty Warriors. It may have been like 2 or 3, one of those, right? And I loved it. I loved being this one warrior that could kill like 5,000 troops all by myself. Yeah, no, it doesn't matter that the AI was completely brain dead, and I'm just like, but I'm swinging this staff, and 20 people just died in one swing. I love it. So I'm enjoying the game. I'm enjoying, hey, we gotta get over here to this part of the battlefield. We're losing over here, and I'm just rushing over there. I don't know how in the world on those old pieces of hardware they were able to put so many enemies and characters on the map. But hey, it looked freaking horrendous. It looked bad. But I guess maybe that's part of the reason. Regardless, I loved it. But by the time they came out with like Dynasty Warrior 6, I think I was a little tired of that. It was the same game, you know, just, you know, maybe looking a little bit better, maybe a few more enemies on the screen, but it was the same design, same combat, same everything, and none of the things that I found very annoying with it seemed to ever get addressed. And eventually I kind of put it down because it's just like, well, I played that already. If I feel like if you're coming out with a Dynasty Warriors 9, I played Dynasty Warriors 3, bro. I already played that game. And so I say that to say that, like, clearly going from Hellblade 1 to 2 isn't going from Dynasty Warriors 3 to 9. But what I'm trying to say is that there is a valid concern when you see things that you've already done and you're like, okay, that's cool, but can we expand on this? Can we make this better? Can we curate this? Can we cut some of the fat off of this so that it's a better, more concise experience? And it's just when you don't see that happening, that's a valid concern that people can have. And I just, as you're saying, Logic, like it seems like there are people. And it's not just the Xbox guys. It's just that it's Xbox guys that's doing it right now. Like I said, when Concord comes out later this year, there are going to be people out there saying you can't complain about this game. There are going to be people out here saying, oh, well, you know, if you like X Defiant, you can't complain about Concord. Huh?
Yeah, but I mean, we had the same thing with TLU 2, right? TLU 2 is perfection in gaming, and God forbid you ever say anything that's a detraction to TLU 2.
Exactly. Like let's talk about how the story has some serious flaws. Let's talk about how the pacing and the structure of the story kind of sucks. Let's talk about why have a love triangle with those 3 days in Seattle with Abby when you already done killed all the people that are involved in it and all her friends. It's just like, wouldn't it have been better if you did like 1 day with Abby, 1 day with Ellie, and then day 2 is back to Abby, so that like it's ramping up to the climatic 3rd day where Ellie kills everybody. Like, just, right. Maybe you would care more about those characters that she slaughtered if, that you tried to build up so much in Abby's days. But no one cares that they're already dead. Like, you don't care about what happens to them and their drama. And is the pregnant lady going to be the side chick now? It's just like, you don't care about none of that crap. And like, when you bring these things up, there are people that's just like, shut up. Neil Druckmann is a god. You don't know what you're talking about. Do you have a TV show based upon your IP? No, you don't. So you don't know anything about the story. It's just like, it's weird that you can't just have like, I can say all those things. I can still say that like The Last of Us Part 2 is a very, very good game. And that they improved upon the combat compared to the first game. Like, big time. Combat way better. And then still say, I think you screwed up on the ending. I think you kind of screwed up with a lot of these characters. I think you made Joel look like a plot-based death and not a character-based death, if for those writers out there know what I mean by that. And it's like, you can say these criticisms and it's okay. It doesn't mean the game sucks. It's just that it's got flaws like everything.
Well, and the important thing is you're not trying to have half a conversation, and that's my frustration, right? That every single time there's a big major game for either Xbox or PlayStation, the huge amount of effort and energy gets poured into how can I figure out how to make this a reductive conversation and be Deion Sanders and take half of the football field away from the other team. And I'm like, I don't understand that, because again, I go back to the people I seek out that I want to have a meaty, meaningful discussion with. I can sit here and literally talk to myself if I want to have a half-sided conversation. That makes no sense. The people I seek out and want to have a meaty conversation with, and that I would think would be entertaining and that people would want to listen to, are people who want to hear a 360-degree conversation. The only parts of the gaming conversation that I want to cut off and that I want to be reductive about are the ones where their opinions being rendered simply on the basis of whether or not a game is being published by Xbox or published by PlayStation.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you really want to pull these things apart and decompose them and break them down and really have those conversations, then we should allow all aspects of the conversation to be had. And I'm not picking on Erodimus in the chat, but I'm just picking this. I'm just selecting this as an example. So my example is when you say something like Erodimus says was, but I saw a reviewer love the first game for vision on the game design being different, and then come back to Hellblade 2 saying the game needed a skill tree. And I'm not saying this is what Erodimus is saying, but I'm using this as an example. My example for that is like, that statement in my mind shouldn't be weaponized to say that therefore that reviewer's review is irrelevant and should be taken off the table. If you, and I'm not saying this to you, Erodimus, again, I'm using this as an example. My point of, if somebody, and that is how that type of statement is used, somebody will cherry pick one line or one segment out of a review and say, well, because the person thinks this, the review's irrelevant. No. If you have a detailed, objective, tangible point of feedback to say why, and I used to see this all the time, for instance, like with laptop reviews, because I keep up with tech, right? I used to hate, particularly Laptop Magazine was really guilty of this. I used to hate a laptop magazine where they take a review of like an IBM ThinkPad, which is clearly not a gaming machine, and then list it as a criticism that the game doesn't have a robust GPU. I'm like, okay, well, the ThinkPad isn't designed for a gamer. But my thing is, if you have a counter to that, then again, going back to the quote I made, articulate it, right? You should be able to refute that concept if you really have a problem with it. If you're not able to, then you probably don't have a problem with it. You're probably orienting around something that's more about a narrative and politicking. And so when we're having these conversations, they should lend themselves to having that level of detail in them. And when they don't, to me, it's simply representative of people who are constantly trying to downvalue the discussion in gaming and drag it down to the lowest common denominator. And that's the tension that is constantly going back and forth between, I'll be egotistical about it, people like us who are constantly trying to pull the gaming conversation upwards and move it up the value chain and make it something that is sophisticated and complex and commensurate and worthy of the artistic works that we're actually talking about.
Yeah, I definitely see your point there. And in regards to Rodimus in the chat, his comment, I mean, I didn't see what the reviewers' statements were in regards to the first game and the second game, but I'll say this, like, you know, some games that I used to enjoy a while ago, I don't quite enjoy them like I do now. So if this guy had a review, like, in when did Hellblade 1 come out? 2017? Was that it?
Yeah.
So that was 7 years ago. Like, are we now allowed to feel differently about a game 7 years later? And to kind of go into a little bit deeper, if he said that he loved the first game's vision on game design, that's not necessarily like, that doesn't necessarily mean that he can't say, he could love the vision on the game design for this game, but he could be talking about a number of different things when he says game design. Like, if he says that this game needed a skill tree, it doesn't mean that he doesn't love the game design. He's saying that he feels like there should be a level of progression for Senua from the beginning of the game to the end that shows growth as far as combat and your abilities go. And one of the things that I said years ago that I would have liked with this game was to have Senua use different weapons. And having a choice of different weapons that kind of have potentially different fighting animations and fighting styles, or using different weapons for specific enemies that you're dealing with. So far, I don't see that. And that is, if by the time I finish the game, if I want to say that's a criticism or something that I felt like would have been a way of evolving the combat going forward, you still could have kept the cinematic feel of the game. You still could have kept it like no progression of the character, no progression of Senua's like abilities as a fighter. Like you still can have that visceral feel while also still having multiple weapons. So it's just like, if that doesn't happen by the end of the game, am I not allowed to complain about that? Like, I think these things are valid, and it's just, I think there's a level of nuance that sometimes gets lost, and I don't understand why, because it's clearly very intelligent people having these conversations. But like, it's just like, it's always, it's kind of like that post you always see on Twitter where someone makes a statement and then the replies of people saying like, oh, so you hate something completely irrelevant. Like, I love orange juice, so you hate apple juice now? What did apple juice do to you? It's just like, what the said, like, I love orange juice. Like, what's it got to do with apple juice? Like, this is, what are we talking about? And it's weird. I think it's a bit weird, and I think we could all do better when it comes to how we discuss these things. Because there's art, you know. Like, I think as time goes on and we see more games like this, I think when it's all said and done, Ninja Theory's decision to make the game the way they made it is I'm glad they did it this way. Because if anything, and I hope that Microsoft, and we can transition to this last topic that we wanted to discuss. I hope this means that like Ninja Theory sticks around even after this, because this kind of game isn't your norm. This is a very unique title most publishers would not have published this game. I mean, even with Hellblade 1 was self-published by Ninja Theory because they couldn't get a publisher to publish it. And so I do have to commend Microsoft for allowing the game to be made the way Ninja Theory intended to make it, the way they wanted to make it. But I hope, especially in light of what we saw a few weeks ago when it came to Tango Gameworks and Arcane Austin, Roundhouse, and Alpha Dog, like I hope that this doesn't, like, because this is not a game that's going to sell. Like games like this don't sell like, say, Hogwarts Legacy. Or if even less than that. Like, what's a game that's so good but not quite Hogwarts Legacy level? Like, I don't know. Resident Evil, the last Resident Evil, for example. It's not going to sell like that. But I think you have to have, when you're working in entertainment, you have to have games like this to show that this is art. And it's not, you can commission these kind of games and you know from the very beginning it's not going to sell amazing. And what if it barely it's a drop in the bucket of your revenue year over year compared to last year, and it barely made its money back. There's still a value in that because what it provides for your platform, your subscription service, for your everything, you as a first party studio, that like this is the kind of game that Matt Booty said, yeah, we want to win awards. We want smaller games that win awards. This is 80 people that made this game. And the first game was made by 24. 80 people ain't a lot in 2024 when it comes to game development. And these are the kind of games, this is where it comes to put up and shut up time. So do you really want these things? Or do you like to say that you want these things? Because, and I do think Ninja Theory is a little different compared to Tango. Ninja Theory has their own proprietary motion capture, performance capture technology, which as we see on display is top notch. And so they do have a value beyond just making games to Microsoft that would, I would say, shows that they need to be kept around far more than the way people may have thought about Tango being all the way across the world and only making a particular kind of game or a particular kinds of games. That said, Tango still shouldn't have been shut down, in my opinion. Right. But let's have that conversation. Is post-launch, we see the reviews, we see the reception. More than likely, this game's going to win, I think, probably awards and best visuals. There probably won't be a game that comes out this year that visually looks better than this game. And best sound design. Shout again to David Garcia. That dude is a genius. And the sound design in this game is amazing. So I think those two awards, they're pretty much a lock on those two. I don't know if this gets into the game of the year conversation. I would say probably not. But does this release make Ninja Theory safe? What do you think, Forte?
So not finishing it, I have a good enough grips on the game right now, being 2 hours away from the end. I think it does, because I do think that there's value for the studio outside of just the game itself. Like, I know that they could rip away the proprietary technology and train somebody else to use it and everything like that, and it's not hard to do that. But I do feel like you said earlier, the biggest thing is this is a unique game to itself. Like, you won't see too many other games made like this. And for this game still to at least meet the expectations of the first game when it came to like Metacritic score, 81 overall, same as the first one, I think says that it would be in a completely different type of game. Like, the first one was way more interactive when it came to your character when it came to the combat and stuff. Like, was the combat as deep? No, but it still had a little bit more interactions to it when it came to the combat. Story, I think, is right there. I agree with you. I think the story for the most part is either on par with the first one or slightly above it, due to a lot of the other things you're going to figure out as you play through the game. And you're going to be like, yo, this is actually even better than I thought it was going to be. So small studio is not like a studio that they have that's 300, 400 deep. I think that probably would have made it more problematic if it was a bigger studio. But since it's a smaller, lean studio, I feel like it will give them the opportunity to be able to move forward with the next project, which has already been greenlit, we hear. So I think that that news kind of gave people the ability to kind of move on and say, okay, well, at least we know Hellblade isn't going to be the last game they make right now. Because I think,
well, I mean, that said, we heard a year ago that Arcane, and I'm not disagreeing with you or that it's saying that it's not the case, but a year ago, in light of at the end of like Redfall, clearly is not the same level of game this is. I'm not comparing. You see, I have to do all these caveats because people try to throw all kinds of strawmen at you, right? But I'm not comparing Redfall to Hellblade 2. But that said, Phil Spencer came out and very publicly said that Arcane Austin was safe. And then less than a year later, they got shut down. Yeah, they also very, very publicly said that Arcane Austin was working on a new game that was an immersive sim that was more their bag. And you can look forward to that in the future at them doing the kind of stuff that they normally do. And we'll never see what that is. And then there are even people out there that say they've heard that, like, because they were pitching a game at the time they were pitching a game is the reason why they got shut down. And it's like, but you came out and you talked about and bragged about how they were pitching another game that was an immersive sim that they are good at. So I say those things just so that people don't get the idea that simply because Ninja Theory is working on a new game already, that's not Project Mara,
right,
means that they're safe from getting shut down. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, they're not safe, but you would just think, I mean, once again, we're dealing with Microsoft here, and Microsoft's completely different from the Xbox division with Phil Spencer making the decisions on a consistent basis for, we don't really know what the measurement of success for Microsoft is when it comes to gaming. Because guess what? For the last generation and a half, 2 generations, ever since Xbox came out, the North Star for Xbox in 2021 was Microsoft putting compute in everybody's living room. Their goal was to put Windows in everybody's living room. That was the number one goal for them to do. They wanted to have a presence, and they accomplished that. Not like everybody's, but they accomplished getting a foothold into that ecosystem. We don't know what we hear what the overall goals of Microsoft is when Satya Nadella comes out about, software everywhere. They're even trying to find a way to detach Windows away from hardware so it could just be ambiguous in the cloud, and you can, wherever you are, you can be able to access any of your data or anything like that. That's where Microsoft wants to go. But when it comes to gaming, since gaming is such a it's an entertainment medium, first of all, but it's way more interactive than anything else. It's not like just making a movie. You literally have to interact with this piece of content. We don't know what their overall stance as a company is for success in that.
I don't even think the studios know that at this point.
And that's the biggest problem that I have with the whole scenario, because I feel like with Microsoft, they allowed certain things to happen over the course of the last generation, that if they cared about it to the point where they want to see it succeed, they did things at the detriment of Xbox. Like the fact that they allowed Xbox to talk about not having to own a console to be able to play all these things. Yes, does that speak to the core competency of Microsoft, because everything is software based, everything is cloud based for the most part, almost, with the exception of a few things that they have? Absolutely. But that's not how gaming works for the most part. Gaming is something that you have a device for, a phone, a tablet, a console, a PC. You know, could console and cloud streaming take over in the future and become that ambiguous thing? Absolutely, it could at some point. We're just not there yet. And it just seems like, just like in 2013, when Microsoft was trying to usher in gaming, tying your entertainment together with the Xbox One and the whole TV and NFL Network, and having, you know, the Snap feature, which was one of the coolest features on consoles, and I'm mad that they got rid of it. But removing, you know, moving in that thing, look where we are now. We're where Microsoft thought we would be. Well, not where we were, where Xbox thought we would be in 2013. That's where we are now, where everything's online. Nobody cares about any of this stuff. Your digital libraries are pretty much locked in place, and that's one of the barriers for people to move on to other platforms and stuff. So they were ahead of the curve back in 2021. It's just like they moved so quickly to get there. And I understand that that's why they're a $3 trillion company, because they have to be ahead of the curve. But they don't know what they need to do in gaming to do that, because right now it feels like the people that aren't gamers, or the people that aren't as knowledgeable in gaming, are making the decisions for the gaming division. And that's partly Xbox's fault by getting themselves in the situation they're in. But who knows exactly where we're going to go. So I think they're safe right now, but we don't know what Microsoft is going to do as a company with gaming over the course of the next couple of years.
Logic, what are your thoughts on this? You think Hellblade is not Hellblade, I'm sorry, Ninja Theory is safe?
Well, I think the main thing is kind of what Forte articulated, right? Which is that we don't know. I mean, and look, anybody can offer tons of opinions. Now I am picking on you, Erodimus, in the chat, because Erodimus is asserting that blah 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 blah. What did he say earlier? That, hey, if the maker of Pentiment is okay, then this team will be okay. Here's the problem: you don't know. And I mean, we have creators in the community who would assert, who have told me as much, that things were said to them by Xbox leadership, by the GLT, right? And then what occurred the week that Tango and the rest of the Bethesda studios, literally half of what we used to think of as that publisher, were wiped off the face of the map, were the exact opposite from the things that they had been told. Were not in conjunction and alignment with the things they had been told. And so my point is that, and what I keep trying to emphasize to people is look, consider history. If that type of event has occurred, that you were told by the leadership of a company that certain things were going to happen, that this was going to be the way that they were going to unfold, and then the exact opposite happened, then you should logically arrive at the conclusion that you don't know. And I think that's our main point of kind of where you have to sit today. I mean, if the corporation said that Hi-Fi Rush met all of the internal metrics, right, in yardsticks, and in fact it exceeded them, and then the result of that, the reward for that, of notionally theoretically achieving that KPI, was for you to be shuttered, which I don't think anybody can think of that action as a reward for good performance. Right? That's a punitive action, and you can choose to not observe it as such or not see it as such. But my point is, if you are an employee, that comes across to you feeling like a punishment, right? As an action that was taken because there was something that you or your team or your business unit or whatever you want to think of it as did not do or did not accomplish. I could render a lot of speculations, and my point with Erodimus in our discussion in the chat wasn't even to say that I'm asserting or agreeing that Ninja Theory is on the chopping block. My point, literally, as a person who spends a lot of time with analogous topics right in my work life, is that like literally it's a flip of a coin. Because if I were to believe that this studio was safe, as I believe that all of these studios who were just recently shut down were safe, what's clearly evident to me is that, you know, I could wake up one morning and the exact opposite of that expectation would happen. So that's the you know, concerning thing, is that we don't know. When you, in my opinion, in my perspective, when you look at the actions that PlayStation takes, I feel like they are pretty relatively consistent, I think, right? If you're a studio and you make a game that doesn't achieve high review scores and doesn't get good sales, right, at your initial outing, right? Because what we saw with Days Gone is that, as far as we can tell, we don't think that it necessarily sold that well on the platform, but even if it did, it didn't garner like super high review scores. And then it went on to sell better and have higher regard as a PC release. But the point in the indication is that if that type of thing happens, meaning that you're even south of where Days Gone was, then you shouldn't be surprised that studio gets closed. I said to people on BRAP, and people argued with me. Remind me, what's the studio that does Nights? Is that Media Molecule?
Nights.
Yeah. But I'm like, look at that game, and everyone was like, oh, it has a robust community, and I'm like,
you mean Dreams?
Yes, yeah, Dreams. I'm sorry.
I was like Nights.
I always
isn't that a Sega game? I was thinking like on yeah.
99 Nights,
right? Yeah, but
I was like Nights.
I always when they talk about that game, that's always the game it makes me think of, is the Sega game. But my point was, I'm like, I don't think that title moves the needle. You can talk about it being a robust community, but I don't think it A, moves the needle. B, I don't see it as being aligned with the direction that it looks like PlayStation is going in now, right? And then we see what happened with that property. So, I mean, we see what happened with Studio London now, which used to be Psygnosis, right? Which was the Wipeout studio. So I feel like, look, if you have a performance envelope that winds up not aligning with the KPIs of PlayStation, or your work that you're doing does not appear to creatively align with wherever PlayStation is going now. And there was a time where PlayStation was like huge on indies, right, at the launch of the PlayStation 4. But they've obviously clearly swerved away from that, and they're doubling down on the tentpole IP, right, which is the same thing, right, relatively, we're hearing from Microsoft as well. Those studios are being closed. So I'm like, okay, you should therefore...
And Square Enix, by the way. A lot of these publishers are doing that same philosophy. They're doubling down on AAA content.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have a talk on this show or on BRAP or somewhere about how that's gonna blow up in some people's face. But anyway,
yeah.
But you should be able to make a list of the 23 studios that are in the Sony stable, right, and say, hey, I think that based on that past behavior, that these studios are at risk, and you'd probably come out with a reasonably accurate list that people should agree on. But when you talk about a Microsoft studio, you just don't know. I mean, like tell me that. I don't know why I always get into this and start forgetting studio names when I just thought of that. Who's the Psychonaut studio again?
That is Double Fine.
Double Fine. So tell me, give me a case study, build me a legal case that you would be willing to go and present in court as to why Double Fine is safe. As to why I should have an expectation, like not an expectation, right? Because this is the problem with the gaming conversation, is that it's not the expectation, it's the people who are going to walk in the room and be super assertive and claim that they're right, and there's 0% room for any detraction from their argument. Give me a legal argument, a closing argument that you can stand up in a court and explain to me and assert why Double Fine is safe. You can't. I know I just went off about not giving any room or quarter for dissension, but I'm not even going to entertain that argument, right?
No, but I see your point. I see your point there, and it's because if this was a year ago, unlike of how they approach these studios, how they acquired these studios, you would say, well, yeah, of course Double Fine is safe. because they acquired the studio with the very idea that they knew what kind of games Double Fine made. Double Fine's never been like a massive AAA studio, or none of their games have never like blown up to be the kind of game that at the end of the year is tracked as one of the top 10 games sold on NPD. That's never been them. That's never been their portfolio. And you knew who you bought when you bought them. You bought a boutique studio that makes very unique titles that are considered to be of high quality and unique experiences that make you go, ooh, that was nice. That was different. I like that. And that necessarily that provides a value to your portfolio and your subscription service and everything, your exclusive games on your platform that no one else has. That's why you acquired. And so when you see studios get shut down, that also provided that level of uniqueness in different ways. Yeah, it's valid to say, you gotta be kind of out of your mind to say, well, no, there's no way they're going to shut this studio down. But I mean, clearly they weren't talking about shutting any studios down 6 months ago. But that's what they're doing.
Games for everyone. Right?
Yeah.
In the last few years, it's entirely been about, hey, the reason we acquire somebody like a Double Fine is so that studio can come here, not have to worry about making payroll, not have to worry about real estate, not have to worry about ordering lunch for the people doing crunch, right? But to have all that type of stuff taken care of for them so that their minds aren't occupied by that, so that they can just focus on their creative works and get the type of game out. Like literally the man came on to Kind of Funny last year and said, in the quotes almost verbatim, one thing I won't do, right, is tell an Obsidian that they can't do Pentiment. Tell an Arcane that they can't do Redfall. Tell these studios that they can't do the things that they want to do. But what we have witnessed is studios being closed down for doing the things that they wanted to do.
And doesn't that kind of,
because they wanted to do Hi-Fi Rush?
Doesn't that kind of make you kind of feel like maybe Phil ain't make that decision? I feel
that's what I've been saying. Look,
yeah, like not saying Phil didn't make the decision to say those. Like he definitely made the decision to make those words. And I believe Phil meant it when he said it. And I feel like Phil still feels that way today. But I think is the decisions to shut studios down is out of his control. Well, and if that is the case, like we can't, like again, it goes back to definitive statements of what can and can't happen. You can't really make that determination anymore. You just gotta kind of see how it all plays out, because if they know full and well what Phil said publicly to people as well as he said behind the scenes to those studios, and they still did this, knowing like you got like Dinga Bakaba, the studio head of Arcane, breaking protocol and speaking publicly on his Twitter account about how he felt about it. And I know that behind the scenes did not play well as far as the reception. So instead of taking constructive criticism and taking it to heart and realizing that you kind of reneged on what things that you said to these studios, you instead just wish he didn't open his mouth.
I don't necessarily think that he was that it was dictated to them to close studios. I think that the scenario is that Amy Hood has come in. She has thrown her third leg on the table, so to speak. Right? And she has said, "Look, I'm tired."
Yeah.
Like I'm tired of having this conversation. I'm tired of having this argument. Here is the bogey. It is not arguable. I talked about the dictatorship earlier, right? This is not a democracy. This is not an opinion. This is the bogey you guys need to hit. I don't quite frankly care how you hit it. I'm not going to sit here and do your jobs for you. I'm not going to micromanage you, but you need to hit this bogey. You have some number of levers that you can pull, dials that you can twist, switches you can flip. Those are the tools that are at your disposal. That's going to give you a limited playground to hit that bogey. And I don't care which one you turn, flip, switch, dial, right? Cycle pumps to fast, to slow, whatever, right? But you're going to get it done, and you're going to get it done by a certain date.
Yep.
Or people aren't going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And guess what? When I always tell people, like, when upper management is stressed, and when they're stressed, trust me, the people underneath, as much as they don't want to let those people go, those people go first.
Yeah, because you don't have any like from, I mean, this is a classic from a limited set of pretty horrible actions to take. These are the ones you have to pick, right? None of them are pleasant. None of them are going to result in people being happy. I'm sure that they are not. Like, I am never, as critical as I am of like things Xbox has done in their messaging and their PR and marketing, it has become since 2022. I'm not going to sit here and say that I believe for one moment that this is something that Phil wanted to do. One of my points of the vector on philosophy is that that's one of the reasons I really liked Phil when he first took the reins, is because philosophically I agree with his vision of gaming, and what it is and what it means to a gamer. But as a business person, right, there's been problems. But I don't think, I mean, and Ibarra kind of, tried to stick up for him. And I think, parts of what Ibarra said were right. I don't think this is something Phil wanted to do. And I'm sure that it kept Phil up late at night. I'm sure it made him sick to the stomach. But like I said, I think.
But then there's also the other side of that is, Mike, shut up. Like, no, like just Mike, shut up. No one gives it. No one gives it.
It's an election.
Yeah. You're trying to get a new job, buddy, and you're out here saying things that everything Mike Ybarra says on Twitter is a resume builder for whoever may hire him next. So Mike, shut up. That's one. Two, nobody cares if Phil Spencer is up at night over having to lay people off. Because guess what? Phil Spencer is still a multi-millionaire with a job, and the people that he laid off ain't got one either. So I don't care, and I'm very sure developers themselves care even less about how Phil Spencer felt about it. Because the long and short of it is that you still did it, and it's still jacked up, and whether you felt you needed to do it or not. But for some reason, Matt Booty still got a job. And you got rid of all these people who did their job, but you ain't get rid of the one guy who ain't been doing his job. So what's good? Like, I mean, are he's just gonna go down? You just gonna go down with the ship with him? You know what I'm saying? Is that what's gonna happen? Is like you guys tied at the hip? You know,
I would add Greenberg to Booty. Those two can go. Now, my only point of that was to say, like, was to simply say, like, and I don't disagree with you. My only point was to say, I'm not trying to come across as if this was a shoulder shrug for Phil, right? As if it was and
I agree with that.
Booty, let them eat cake. I don't think that's the way it went down.
And I agree. Look, I don't. You gotta be a human being to. I don't think everyone's Bobby Kotick, and Bobby Kotick probably laid off 1,000. Remember that one year he laid off 1,000 workers and then like bragged about how they had the best profits ever, like a day later, and he probably did it, and he had a glass of wine and watched, like National Geographic and watched some lion, chase down a gazelle and rip it apart, and just enjoyed that because he just seems like that kind of guy. I don't know. Maybe he's different. Doubt it. But it's just like we're not saying Phil Spencer is that callous and that unforgiving or just not caring about like the impact that his decisions make on other people. But that said, that only goes so far. You can understand that a dude didn't want to do what he had to do, what he felt he had to do, and didn't want to make these decisions, and still hear what Dinga Bakaba said when it came to you expected us to deliver games, and you had an expectation for that, and we do that. And we also have an expectation for you. And then that's not to use us to help you out of the situations you put yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
So you put yourself in these financial situations with your own decisions, and then so we bear that cost. When you told us that wasn't going to be the case when we signed on, like you're going to have to own that. And so I say all that to say, so we can go ahead and finish up here. We don't know for certain if that's Ninja Theory, and Ninja Theory is going to be another one on the chopping block. I think that they are safe due to the fact that, as I said before, like they got proprietary performance motion capture technology that can be put into way more use than just this game. It could be used with other studios. They could be helping other studios. So even if like they feel like commissioning more games for Ninja Theory after their current 2 projects are done, or maybe they even cancel them, I think Ninja Theory will still be around, maybe in more of an ex-dev role than what we've known them before. Simply because of the technical expertise they have and what they can provide for all of Xbox first party going forward. But and I said this, damn, who did I say this to? I said this to somebody. I'm getting old, but like I haven't said this to you, Forte. I don't know who I said this. It doesn't matter. I'll say it again. I much prefer if that be the case for Ninja Theory, that they make these kind of games. Because I was talking about how like they used to make games where people like what combat was the main focus, and everyone talked about the combat.
Yeah,
and now
Odyssey, Enslaved to the West and stuff like that.
Yeah, DMC, like even though people didn't like Bleeding Edge, I like Bleeding Edge. In the combat, I enjoy the combat in Bleeding Edge. But if they are becoming a studio where like Project Mara looks more like a horror game, we don't know for certain, but that's the way it looks to me. And if the next game that they're working on is actually Hellblade 3 and not like a brand new IP, so it's more likely going to be more of what we're seeing with Hellblade 1 and 2 when it comes to combat. I'd much rather this studio pivot to that than, it's been a while since they used to make those games that were very combat heavy. Maybe they don't have a lot of that staff around no more. Maybe the guys that were the pivotal key cogs to the machine to make that combat really sing ain't there no more. I'd much rather they become what they are now than become what BioWare is. Where BioWare is trying to do to achieve what they once did when they were in their prime, but they ain't got none of the players. They ain't got none of the players that can get that done. They're not the 90s Bulls. They're the 2000s Bulls. Those teams sucked. Those Chicago Bulls teams is garbage. They ain't the Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen guys. And so it's like, that's not BioWare no more. So maybe BioWare needs to pivot to doing something that accentuates the talent that they have instead of getting shut down trying to be something that they're not. I don't know, but like we'll have to see. I just think that like the whole definitive, this should even be a conversation kind of talk needs to be put on the back burner, especially in light of recent things. Anything else you guys want to say before we get into the outros?
Oh, we good, man. Hellblade's a great game so far, so that's the only thing I want people to take away. Whatever your thoughts on the game are, don't let it be swayed by other people's opinions. Like, I was up at 4:00 a.m. in a party when all the reviews went live, and the first review I saw was a 6 out of 10, and I was like, "Whoo, about to be bad today." But guess what? It didn't change my opinion though that I was gonna play this game no matter what. Like I thoroughly enjoyed the first game. It was a game that really impacted me, and I was like, I'm playing this game no matter what. It was what, and everybody in here knows. Like I was a huge Destiny stan back in 2017. It was hard to get me off that game back then. So for the fact that I was willing to drop that game to play the first Hellblade and finish it, let people know that I was super serious into it. So I just want people to have their own opinions for stuff, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. voice your opinions and don't let nobody tell you that you can't have an opinion, even if it's the complete opposite opinion of them. And just enjoy the games that you're playing. So for myself, I enjoy the game, and I'll be finishing it this before this weekend. So
cool. You good, Logic?
Yeah, man, I'm good.
All right, cool.
Where can they find you?
I don't need to be found. I know
you guys can find Logic on Twitter. His name is Game Logic. He writes.
Don't come looking for me until we raise the floor on the discourse. That's the business I'm gonna stand on tonight.
He basically saying this is the rubric, and if you ain't down with this rubric, you better get up out of here. Don't come to his Twitter account.
Forte, by the way, look, there's one thing I do need to say to you.
Yo.
You cannot, when it comes to PC gamers, right?
Yes.
And whatever criticism or problem they have, right, with the business and hardware, you can't say people are entitled to their opinion anymore when you're one of the people now running around rocking a 4090. You have now put yourself with the elite.
Okay.
And so you just need to wear that like a badge. And
I do wear it like just because your opinion may be completely different than mine doesn't mean it's right. I'll listen to your opinion. I'll even respect it. It doesn't mean it's right though. So I see where you're coming from, and I'm right there with you.
Not for everybody, but just when it comes to PC, you need to.
Oh no,
you need to turn your nose up in the air.
Listen, we wear that badge. That badge cost a lot of money to get into.
That man was wearing that badge before he even got the 4090 in his PC. He was all telling me, what you doing over there, slow mo, with that peasant GPU? I'm like, what?
Damn.
I
have a 4080 Super, and you haven't even used yours yet. I'm like, how does it feel not even having a 4090 yet? Like, how are you talking like this, and you ain't even put it in your PC yet?
Yeah,
good grief.
Put it in there now.
Hey, that's like the brother that was your friend last week, and he get a new girl or a new car. He come to school, he a different person.
He a different person.
We can't be friends no more. We can't be friends.
How dare you?
Hey,
but
you
yeah, shout out to everybody for coming through. We appreciate you guys. Let's get these channel member shout outs done real quick, and we're gonna get up out of here. Want to shout out to the amazing Stardust Acero, K Asante of the Gaming Circle podcast. Shout out to him. The legendary Yobi, he is legendary. If you don't know, you know now. Now you know. Neil S, Texas, your boy Roy, Corey Hale, Donnell Brown, J387, Enrique of Basement Radio Arcade Podcast, Hargeet Shani, Ramon Terrell, aka Trevor Birdsong, aka the Hallmark Channel Hall of Fame actor. If you don't know, you better watch some Hallmark movies. He's probably been in all of them. Gaming Forte, and that guy Smitty. Appreciate you guys.
And on this side, shout out to MASH, Brat Basement Radio Arcade Podcast, Texas, Corey Hale, your boy Roy, Donnell Brown, Ramon Terrell, Argy Chini, Slumbo Backslap, DJ Oris, that guy Smitty, and what is that? Game Logic. Shout out to you, Game Logic.
All right, and we're gonna get up out of here.
Logic ain't on that list. Shout out
what?
to you, nothing. Shout out to he didn't fall for what I was saying. Shout out to Yobi, man. What's up, man? What's up, bro?
You're too much. We're gonna get out of here. It is almost 1 a.m, and I need to go to sleep. I gotta get kids up. I gotta work. In the morning. I gotta do all kinds of stuff. So hope you guys enjoyed the show. Enjoy the rest of your night. How much time of it there is left, and of course, play your games. Out. Peace.
Peace.